Hey guys, welcome to Juicy Tea, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, shocking, and satisfyingly juicy. This story is absolutely insane, and it just keeps getting more and more wild with each update. So yeah, let's get into it. I think my husband fathered his best friend's children, and now one of them is attracted to my daughter. Post by PsychFactor. This began as a dark, intrusive thought that I could never shake off, and over the years, it's bloomed into a poisonous flower that infects my entire psyche. I'm a 42-year-old woman, and my husband Luke is 43, and so is Amy. I met Luke in college, but he's known Amy since they were about 7. They did everything together and understood each other implicitly. They were best friends. They've always insisted that they're surrogate siblings to each other. Naturally, I, as a new girlfriend, felt a little threatened by Amy and her closeness to Luke. But they both reassured me that I had nothing to worry about, that their bond was not romantic and had never been sexual, that Amy really was just the sister that Luke had never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long for me to forget all and any insecurity I had about Amy. She became my friend too. She even officiated our wedding. Luke and I have built a wonderful life together, and we always had a strong relationship. After we got married and moved in together, we still saw a lot of Amy, and I was fine with that. I've passed many a night on the town trying to help Amy find a man, as she's always lamented how she's unlucky in love. Luke and I started having children after we were married, and at around the same point, so did Amy. For further context, my children are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise 10 and Carter 6. Amy's children are Tom 17, Kaylee 14, and the twins, Adam and Jenna, both 9. Now, Amy was not in a relationship at this point. She wasn't married, and as far as I knew, she was dating but not consistently. As Luke and I had more kids and our family grew, periodically, Amy would find herself pregnant as well. Luke and I never knew anything about the fathers in question. I kind of assumed that maybe Amy was sleeping around and just not keeping in contact with her one-night stands. Luke agreed this was probably the answer. While I did ask each time if Amy knew the paternity, she always said no. And she didn't seem that worried about the idea of raising kids on her own, so I didn't pester her. Of course, she had us to support her, so there was that. While Amy never asked for any help, Luke was never going to let his best friend struggle to stay afloat when she had children to raise. Financially, we're very fortunate and privileged. I have a job that pays handsomely, and Luke has very wealthy parents who already knew and loved Amy, so they were happy to provide for her. My in-laws defy all stereotypes. They're the kindest and gentlest people. So we were able to support Amy to get her and her kids a home. People might be tempted to call her a leech, but I never saw it that way. None of us did. She needed help, and we could provide it. Of course, with Amy being Luke's best friend since they were kids, they often hang out together on their own. Hey, that's fine. Sometimes I hang out with Amy one-on-one as well, though Luke does it more often. She was his friend first after all. This included him going over to her house, and at times, sleeping there. Was I a fool to trust him and believe that nothing was going on? Perhaps. But for years, they presented as being buddies, like siblings. I never picked up on any vibes between them. As one can expect, our children were brought up together. Not in the same house. Our home is decently sized, but even we don't have room for 8 kids. But we made sure Amy's kids met ours from a young age and always got along. And over the years, strong bonds of friendship have formed, which is good, especially if I'm right and they share blood. I've been dawdling to get to the main point. Yes, I've come to suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's children, if not all of them. Frankly, I do suspect they're all his. I would never have believed my husband be capable of such a thing, and it's given me no indication that he's the unfaithful sort. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy. And I have to confess, I can't remember seeing her with any real boyfriend over the years. She'd talk to men at bars and parties, I would try to be her wingman and so on, but nothing ever really seemed to happen. So when she got pregnant for the first time, I was curious. When it happened again and again, I began to wonder if she had some sort of secret fella who she didn't want us to know about for whatever reason. but I couldn't think of any reason why she'd want to hide him, especially from her children. After our youngest was born, Luke and I agreed that the time had come for him to have a vasectomy. Amy's twins had come just a couple of years prior. Of course, after the procedure, Luke and I continued to make love, but I no longer had to think about pregnancy. Meanwhile, Amy never got pregnant again after the twins. Is it a coincidence that Luke had a vasectomy and then both of us stopped getting pregnant? I don't know, but Luke would still visit her, and he wasn't just going to see her, but also checking up on her children. In general, I should have paid more attention to it sooner, but Luke's always acted more like a father to them, especially as they've gotten older. He's the father they never had. He doesn't neglect me or our children, not one bit. He's doing double duty. On its own, the idea that he's a surrogate father to Amy's fatherless children isn't inherently suspicious. One could even call it noble. But it combines with a lot of other little things. There is appearance as well. I won't go into specifics of hair colour, eye colour, or unique physical traits because I'd rather limit the identifying factors of the people involved and keep this whole thing as vague as possible. But suffice to say, Amy's children, they certainly look like they could be Luke's. Kaylee has a very unusual allergy that Luke also has. The twins look very much like him, Adam in particular. And the older Tom has gotten, the more of Luke I can see in his face and personality. While their race doesn't matter, the reality is that Luke is a different race from Amy, and Amy's kids look pretty biracial. I could easily believe that their father is the same race as Luke. Doesn't mean that Luke has to be the father, but it sure seems like it. I've never voiced my anxieties to either Amy or Luke. I don't want to be the bad guy. And guilty or innocent, I already know they would flatly deny any accusations and be hurt by them. Imagine if that drama reached the ears of my children or Amy's kids. Either way, Luke continues to spend time with Amy and her children, just as her children spend time with mine. I have hinted to Luke that I feel like I need more attention and wish he wouldn't give so much to Amy. But he's either missed my cues or pretended to miss them. I don't want to push this idea that he's favouring her because it's not really even true. He's never neglected me for her. I can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate before, likely numerous times. I've been letting this go and turning a blind eye for years. It was a dark thought in the back of my mind after Kelly's allergy was discovered, but I dismissed it. It got worse after the twins were born. Then, when Amy stopped having babies, I wanted to feel reassured by that. But Luke had gotten a vasectomy, so if anything, that made my anxiety even worse. There's been nights that I wish the twins were younger, that they'd come along after Luke's procedure. It's been twisting me into knots for a long time, but I don't want to be the one who rips our family apart, especially since, technically, I could be wrong. Except now, I'm very worried, because in the last few months, we've had a new development in our kids' social circle. Tom, Amy's eldest, asked Sophie out. Sophie is my eldest. She's really blossomed over the last few years and become quite the outspoken beauty, so I'm not shocked she's getting some male attention. But Tom asking her out had me thrown. Sophie said no, but only because I'm quite protective when it comes to her dating, and she knew she'd have to ask me first. I could tell she was flattered and intrigued by his interest, and wanted to say yes. She approached me to talk about it. Bless my girl, she did everything right. I think she expected I would see things her way and agree she could date Tom, but much to her surprise, I firmly said no. That caused a bit of conflict. She didn't even want to date him that badly. She just couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to, and I couldn't explain it to her. All I could come up with was, he's too old for you, which he is, but it's not really about that. When Amy and Luke heard, I was very curious to see what their reactions would be. If either of them agreed with Sophie and tried to convince me that the two of them should be allowed to date, I think I would have been relieved and taken it as proof that I was wrong about something going on between them, that I was wrong about who fathered Amy's children. But the ambiguity continued. They took my side. Both of them put their foot down, though not as fiercely as I did. Luke agreed with me, but he was also worried that trying to forbid such a romance would only make Sophie want it more. He was probably right about that. Amy seemed more apathetic to the idea. She didn't want Tom to date Sophie either, and she backed me up. But I don't know, she just wasn't taking it as seriously. She seemed to think that it was just a fleeting crush. Well, it wasn't. In the months that followed those conversations, Tom would spend more and more time with Sophie. They would be alone, or with other friends, anytime they possibly could. It's become abundantly clear that Tom is crazy about Sophie and wants to be with her. And he definitely wants to be physical. I've been watching them like a hawk and noticed his eye wandering many times. And while I'm doing everything I can to kill this budding romance in the crib, I'm also feeling somewhat powerless. Sophie hasn't outwardly defied me. She's still just hanging out with Tom as friends. So forcing them to stop spending time together would be unreasonable and would probably encourage more sneaking around. But I'm so afraid that they're already doing that. My nightmare is that they're secretly dating and doing God knows what when no one's looking. I've observed Tom being rather handsy with Sophie, and she presents no objection whatsoever. And I just don't know what to say. I had considered trying to convince Sophie that Tom is like her brother, but if she doesn't see him that way, I don't really have the power to rewrite their emotional dynamic or the history of their friendship. I always saw Amy and her children as being like a family, but my kids might see Amy's kids more as best friends. The problem is, if my husband has indeed been having an affair all these years, and I'm right about the paternity of Amy's children, then Tom and Sophie can't be anything more than friends under any circumstances. End of discussion. It can never happen. I feel powerless to stop it though. Luke has apparently talked to Tom about this, as has Amy, but he's unrelenting and he won't give up on Sophie. I think she enjoys that attention and devotion. Tom has also confronted me and asked why I'm so against this when I know him very well and know he would be good to Sophie. I didn't know what to say other than to fall back on her being too young for him, but that won't work forever. If, God forbid, they're still attracted to each other in a few years, then they'll pursue this with abandon, and once they're legal adults, there's nothing I can do about it. Amy and Luke agree with me that Tom cannot date Sophie, but that's all they've really done. They feel just as powerless as me to prevent teen love. It genuinely feels sometimes like they've just given up and will bury their heads in the sand about this. Just do nothing and hope the feelings pass as Tom and Sophie get older. Which, yeah, they're in high school and it's unlikely Tom will be in love with Sophie forever. But my fear is she'll let him do something intimate with her before that time comes. Something neither of them can ever take back. I am this close to opening a door I cannot close. This close to screaming at Luke that all this wouldn't be happening if he hadn't cheated on me all these years. If he hadn't been all but raising a second family with his surrogate sister behind my back. Now Luke's son wants to F our daughter, his actual sister, because as far as he knows, she's just his childhood friend, and it's all Luke and Amy's fault for what they've done. If I speak up, everything gets blown to hell. On the off chance I'm wrong, I'm a horrible monster who accused the love of my life and one of my closest friends of doing something horrible. If I'm right, it still tears our entire structure apart. The family and social unit we've become over the last several years is gone, and everyone will be stressed and upset even if Luke and I don't divorce. If I do nothing, Sophie will eventually sleep with Tom and be his girlfriend. And I'm low-key terrified it will happen sooner than later. Or worse, it's already happened under my nose. I hope to hell this relationship fades as they mature. But what if it doesn't? What if they wind up being together for years? What if they marry and want to get pregnant someday? And if I tell Sophie the truth about Amy's kids, then everyone else finds out too, and that's going to ruin so many lives. It would shatter my kids' perception of their father and of their Aunt Amy. And what about Amy's children? They're innocent. They didn't ask for this. They don't control where they came from, and I don't want to hurt them. Admittedly, I'm not happy with Tom at the moment. A week ago, I saw him put his hand on Sophie's butt, and I wanted to knock his teeth out. But he doesn't deserve the burden of knowing that it's his half-sister he's been fantasizing about. It's also effed up, and I don't know what to do. I've been looking the other way and letting my husband and his best friend insult me for such a long time now. I thought I could live with it, but this business with Tom and Sophie has me distressed. Down in the comments, known by my middle name breaks down the options OP has. If you're wrong and say nothing, no harm, no foul, on all counts, this is a win. If you're wrong and say something, there's a chance your marriage and social unit will fall apart. But given how close your husband and his friend are, and the risk of siblings dating, I'd say there's a reasonable chance it doesn't fall apart if your husband understands your point of view, especially if you discuss it discreetly with your husband first, and voice your concerns about the kids dating. This is a soft win, if handled carefully, and a nominal loss if not handled well. If you're right and say something, your husband and his friend get found out, the marriage and social unit falls apart, it's their fault, and you protect the kids from potential incest. This is a win. If you're right and say nothing, there's a serious chance the kids will engage in incest without knowing, and your husband's infidelity continues to go unaddressed. Consider how the kids will feel in however many years' time if this all comes out after the fact. The truth will come out. This is a huge loss. On the face of it, you have an impossible decision to make. If you're able to discreetly do DNA tests, I'd suggest you do this. It'll give you the proof you need to raise your concerns with your husband, if it comes back positive. In my personal opinion, everything you said screams to me that your instincts are right. If you say nothing, the kids will end up committing incest. Can you sleep soundly at night if you say nothing and that comes to pass? I'd discuss with your husband discreetly and approach it from the perspective of the possible incest. This story is an entire saga. More and more insane updates just keep coming out, so I'll be breaking it into more bite-sized videos. If you like this video, please let me know and subscribe for more juicy tea.